Look at this group. So good morning, and welcome to Providence, Rhode Island and the Always On Symposium. How are you guys doing today? I don't know about you, but I thought that was kind of pitiful, wasn't it? So we're going to try this one more time. Last year we did this at Gillette Stadium. I want them to hear you at Gillette Stadium. So how are you doing today? Okay, a group of high school students could do a better job than that. It was a little bit better. So what I want everyone to do is I want everyone to stand up for a second. Also, I see a bunch of people hanging around the back of the room there. I'm not sure if you're my stalkers or groupies, but I'd like to have you fill in some of the empty spots here in the room. So make your way to the front, find a seat, sit, and get ready to join us. So, are you guys ready to try it again? Okay, before we get started, Maestro, can I have you cue the music, please? Okay, come on, guys, let's do this. I can't do it. Okay, that's good. Always on, always on. Come on, always 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 on. Okay, how are we doing today? Oh, now that's what I'm talking about. Okay, let's have a seat. Wow, now that was impressive. That's what I expect. So when someone else asks how you're going to do it, what are you going to say? How are you doing? What are you going to say? Okay, we still got to work on this a little bit, I think. So today is freaking amazing. Who could have imagined that 27 years ago when we started Atreon that I'd be on a stage talking to this amazing group? I never would have thought it would be possible. So I'm here today to share some of my lessons and some of my insights that I've learned over the last 27 years of running a business. And I want to share that with you. When I look around this room, I see many faces that were with us from the very, very beginning. They remember us when we were a 10-person company or a 20-person company. I see many new faces in the room, people that have joined us in the last few years as we continue to grow and grow. And they've joined us on our journey. And I see some faces I barely recognize. They're relatively new, and this may be their first experience for them to really get to know Atreon. So I wanted to all of you, I want to extend our sincerest gratitude for taking the time out of your busy schedules to share this day and this moment with us. So, we're going to do a quick poll before we get started. So this is our fourth Always On. And we've gotten bolder and bigger every year through our Always On symposiums. Our first symposium we did, we had about 150 attendees. We grew it the next year to about 250 attendees. The last symposium we did was 405 people that came to our event. Today, there's almost 600 people that will be in this room throughout the day. So it's amazing. So what I want to do is a quick poll. You're going to see there's a number, 22333, that I want you to text kind of how many of the Always On symposiums you have attended. It would be first AOS, second AOS, third AOS, or fourth AOS. Just text your response, your vote, and we'll do a quick poll and see how many of you guys have been here, how many are first-timers. So this is pretty amazing. If you look at this, many of you in this room, this is your first time attending this event. So I want to welcome you to this event. For people who have never been here before, we want to welcome you here. One of the things that we did different with this symposium than we did with past symposiums is that we invited people that are non-IT. So this is going to be an IT event that you're going to be at where we're not going to talk a lot about IT specifically. We're not going to talk about bits and bytes and gigabytes and storage or any of that kind of stuff. We're going to talk about how you actually get better outcomes in the business and how IT can enable that. That's our focus of today's discussion. Do you guys believe that we're going to be experiencing a lot of change in the industry in the next few years? And not just in the IT industry, but in our businesses. When I think about what's happening over the course of the next decade, we're going to be seeing a lot of change happen. And it's going to happen at an accelerated pace, a pace that is unimaginable. Whatever has happened for the last 2, 3, 4 decades will be nothing in comparison to what happens in the next 10 years. What I want to do is share a quick story with you. About 30 years ago, I had the opportunity to learn how to surf for the first time. Has anyone here, can I see a show of hands, anyone that's ever surfed in the room? Okay, there's a few of us that have surfed. I was much younger then, more nimble, more agile, had a stronger core. So I go out and I learn how to surf. And the most important lesson I learned after I learned how to stand up on the board a little bit was it was important to match the speed of the wave. So as you're out there on your board and the wave is coming in, I have to match that speed. So you start paddling. If I paddle too slow, what ends up happening, the wave passes you by, and you never get to ride it. You never even get to get up. Then you have to sit there and wait over and over and over for the next wave to come in that's good for ride on. So if I can't match the speed and I'm too slow, I miss the wave. I miss the opportunity. If I'm lucky enough to match the speed, go too fast, it's actually tragic. You actually get underneath the wave, and the wave, depending on the size of it, will crash down on you, which it did to me, and drives you into the ocean floor, and you end up all black and blue and scraped up, and it's not a good thing. So sometimes you're going faster than the speed of change. It's bad. It's tragic. So you have to perfectly match that speed. If you're able to match that speed, it's unbelievable. It is the most amazing experience that you can imagine. You're on that board. You can feel the acceleration as you start to pick up speed. You can feel it. You can hear the physical roar of the board against the wave. It is the most amazing experience that you can ever run into. So when I think about this, we're in the point of facing unbelievable change. Our organizations, the business of what we do, not IT, are going to be forced to try to keep pace with this change. And I believe the only way that we're going to be able to do this is by using IT correctly to drive that change at an accelerated pace. IT has to be essential, has to be strategic, and has to be relevant to the business to move it forward. I'm going to share a quick video with you that's going to talk about change. I find videos like this very fascinating. How many people have seen a video like this in the past? So I remember my first time I saw a video that talked about change, especially that had a lot to do with technology. And when I remember watching that video, what I thought was amazing, they were talking about the growth of social media. And this was about 7 or 8 years ago, and social media was not a standard word that everyone used. Their reference point was MySpace. In MySpace, they measured the amount of users in the millions. So when I think about this video, how much has changed? MySpace has risen and fallen. It's now kind of a footnote in a lot of presentations and books. Facebook is now the big thing. We measure users in the billions. We talk about if it was a country. The first time I saw a slide deck like this that talked about Facebook, it was like the 20th largest country in the world. Now it's the 3rd largest country in the world if it was a country. I bet you someplace, somewhere, someone is developing the next application that will replace Facebook as the new buzz. And we probably have some of them that are already online that people are starting to shift to. Our world is changing fast. And it's changing at an incredible rate. Things that we never conceived of that we had to deal with 10 years ago, such as mobile phones that are more powerful than many supercomputers that we had in the early 80s and 90s. We never had to contend with that. We never had to contend with everyone posting their most intimate secrets on a social media network outside of the workplace. We never thought those things would be a reality, yet we're facing them. This change is getting faster. It took 7 or 8 years for MySpace to go from going to be #1 to being a footnote. I bet you the time it takes Facebook to go from being #1 to a footnote is going to be half that time as we continue to look at it. So when I talk about this change is not a linear type of change. It's an exponential change. So I want to demonstrate what this means. Does everyone understand the difference between linear change and exponential change? Linear change means is that I change at a constant rate. So if I take one step One step is what I've taken, so that's step one. When I take my next step, I take the exact same step. It's changing at the same distance. So that would be 2. What's this one? Come on, count with me. So we'll stop here, but you can imagine if I did that 30 times, I'd mark off about 60 to 90 feet of space that I would have covered with linear growth. So I want to do a little bit different now. I want to do it and give you an example of what exponential growth would look like. So we're going to start the same process again. My first step that I take 1. Okay, my next step, so that was 1. My next step is actually 2 steps. That's 2. My next step is actually going to be 4. It's going to double. So now I'm at my 3rd step. If I keep doing this out 30 times, I would have traveled around the world 26 times. So think about that's the rate of change that we're dealing with. I was at an event for Cisco about a week ago, and they had a speaker, and the speaker wrote this book called Abundance. I'm not sure if you've read it. I've heard they've been on NPR a couple of times talking about the book. This speaker brought up some very interesting points that I think are very relevant to us. And the reason why we're here is because we want to achieve better outcomes. Because our livelihoods, if you're in IT, depend on us achieving better outcomes for IT, but also for our businesses. So here's the first interesting fact that I think that came out of his research, is that in 1 decade, in 10 years from today, 90% of IT jobs that exist today will not exist a decade from now. So I want you to think about this. 90% of the jobs that exist today in IT will not exist in 1 decade. Now, when I first heard this, I was in an audience like you. There were hundreds of thousands of people in the room, thousands of people in the room. And I said, wow, that's an amazing statistic. But then in the back of my head, this little voice, this cynic, the technical side of me kind of coming through, it says that can't be true. And then I started thinking about Atrion in our history. We've been in business for 27 years. So if I wind the clock back and I think about 20 years ago at my company and the IT roles that we had in our company. Now, we service our clients, so we have IT services people. If I think of all those roles, not a single role exists in my company today. Not one. So over 20 years, not one IT job we had 20 years ago exists today. I then said, okay, what happened about 15 years ago? And I went through 95% of the jobs that we had 15 years ago don't exist. The only jobs that are somewhat similar to what we did back then was the front person that answered the call in our call centers. That's the only role that is exactly the same today as it was 15 years ago. Now, granted, they deal with different things and they need different skills, but it's changing drastically. 2 other statistics I'll share with you real quickly is that number 1 is that we think about going back in time and thinking about businesses. If I go back to the year 1920 and I started a business, the average life expectancy in 1920 for my success rate, how long I would survive, was 67 years. So if I started a business like Atrion in 1920, I've been way ahead of my time, and I would have got in before the boom, but my life expectancy would be 67 years. If I start a business today, my life expectancy is 15 years. So think about that. Our businesses are being assaulted on all fronts, and the expectancy, the challenge to just survive from 1 year to the next is increasing, and it's going to increase faster and faster. The 3rd statistic that I think that was really, really interesting to me as well, he predicts that in the next decade, that 40% of the Fortune 500 companies will cease to exist. So this is what we're facing, is this tidal wave of change. And we have to figure out how we're able to ride that tidal wave of change. So I want to do another quick poll with you guys. So the same thing, we're going to text our vote to 22333. I want you to think about your role, not you specifically, but the role that you fill right now today. And I want you to think about what does it look like over the next decade. And we have a number of choices here from that. There's not going to be much change with your role. It's going to be the same today as it is in the next 10 years. Or there'll be minor changes, but it will still exist. Or it will still exist, but there'll be some major changes. Or it will be completely obsolete. So if we start to look at the results that we're seeing here, we can see that most of us in this room believe that our role is going to change to some effect or not. There's very few that see very little change in your role in a decade from now. We're seeing some people that said there's some minor things that we need to do. We need to learn a few new skills to keep pace with what's happening. But if we look at the majority of people, if your role still exists, it's going to require major changes and major evolutions for us. Part of why we're talking about things today, and what we'll talk about throughout the day, we have to take charge of our careers to be prepared for these changes. And here's the interesting fact. We cannot wait for the change to be thrust upon us. Marcel mentioned I do a lot in the community. One of the things I do in the community, I actually help coach people that have been unemployed. And we'll go down to the network, Rhode Island, one-stop shops, and we'll actually do seminars on people how to get reemployed. The people we focus on are people that had skill sets in IT. We talk to literally hundreds of people a year. There were IT specialists in the last 20 years. But they're laid off and can't find a job. Just with the people I know, there are 500 open IT jobs in the state of Rhode Island right now, just with the people I know and deal with on a day-to-day basis. These people cannot get a job. What's happened is that they became victims of this, what we see up here. Their roles were changing. They weren't paying attention to it. They were busy doing their jobs day in and day out. They weren't looking forward. 5 years go by, 10 years go by, they're doing relatively the same thing. Then one day, the company no longer needs a COBOL programmer. No one needs a data processing specialist. And the person gets let go from their company. Now it's a panic to try to change my skill sets to compete in a new economy. And it's next to impossible. We have to stay current and ahead of this if we want to be relevant as we move forward. If I look at my career over the last 27 years, I've seen major evolution in myself and major growth. And people that have known me, whether you're a client and knew me back in 1991, 92, 89, people that have known me in the last 5 years, you see I'm constantly evolving my role. I'm constantly preparing myself for the next stage of my career. Now, with that said, I've played many roles. Some of you first met me, I was the geek. I was the most technical person in our company. Yeah, we had 2 people, so it was easy to be that. But I was the geek. You know, I was the geek when things didn't work, they brought in. I was the geek when they wanted to design something, they brought me in. And I could talk all the geeky words, the bits and bytes, and I could add and subtract and multiply and divide and hex and, you know, octal and binary. I was that kind of person. Then over time, I became kind of a technologist. I learned how to raise my language up, so I wasn't talking bits and bytes, but I was talking about how products and systems came together and worked to solve a particular problem. Then over time, I became, you know, a president of an organization, a CIO of an organization, to today where I'm the CEO of a fairly decent-sized company. So today I want to talk to you not as a technologist, not as Tim that owns a IT services company. I want to talk to you just as a straight CEO. The function of a CEO. All your organizations have someone that plays that top leadership role. So I want to talk to you as I'm that person in your company and what's really important to me. So I want you to think about this. When we started our company 27 years ago, it was really one person, my partner Charlie. We started our company in the spare bedroom of his house. We had literally no money. We absolutely had no clients. The only thing that we had going for us was a pocket full of dreams. And so over the years, we had to build this organization to where we are today. We employ, between all the entities that Atreon is involved with, about 250 employees. We've grown from nothing to over $100 million in annual revenue. So we've grown pretty substantially. We've had basically 27 years of growth, 27 years of profitability, and we've been a big player in the community, a big player in the industry. So we've had a substantial impact here. So how do we do these kind of things? How do we make a difference? Well, what I want to share with you is that we thought about our business from the very beginning differently than most organizations. Most organizations, when you ask people why they start the business, you get some very interesting responses. We had one thing that I say is different than most of our contemporaries at the time. We thought about how we were going to run our business different. And we thought about the impact that we really wanted to have versus the results and outcomes we were trying to achieve. And we worked backwards from there. So we're going to do another really quick poll. So I want you to think that you've asked a number of CEOs, like me, why did you start your business? And we have a number of responses here that are on the board. So the first one, they started the business because it was their hobby, their passion, they were good at something, and so they started the business for that reason. So you're just going to say, my hobby. The next one is that it's about money. They wanted to make it rich. And so your response would be make money. The third is independence. They didn't want to work for anyone else. They wanted to be their own boss. The next category is that they lost their job in some fashion. They were fired, they were laid off, their company moved out of state and they were without a position. There's all those kind of reasons. Then the last, it's all the other things. So as you see, as this poll is coming out, you're going to see what I see most common. When I talk to people, the most common response I get is to make money. That's the number one reason why they want to own a business. They want to be successful. They want to make lots of money. The second most common, which we're seeing here as one of the top leaders, is that they wanted their independence. Those two predominantly are the two responses I almost always get. Occasionally I'll get someone, we started this because it was their hobby, there was their interest, they liked what they do. Most of those individuals have created like what I call a lifestyle business. It's not a big business, they're not looking at growing it, but it's very lifestyle-ish. I've seen an increase in the last decade in people that have been transitioned out of their current employment that have started businesses. So when we think about Atreon and what we were trying to do, it had absolutely nothing with making money. Charlie and I like money, but it was never part of our conversations. We never thought about how much money we wanted to make, what we want to do, when's our exit strategy. We didn't talk about those kind of things. To us, it was really unimportant. The second thing, neither one, Charlie or myself, really cared to work for anyone else, but the main reason why we started our company wasn't about that. I would say we were good at IT, but it wasn't our passion. We could have started a business doing anything. So when we thought about our business, we thought about one thing. What is it that we want to have? What is it that we want to be known for? Why do we want to own this business? And it came down to a simple thing. We wanted to have a positive impact. That's all we cared about. Many of you in this room, and I won't have you raise your hand so we won't have to embarrass ourselves, some of us that are in this room were in IT 27 years ago. It was a completely different world. We were gods, weren't we? The ones that were around in 1987, we were freaking gods. People were getting these PCs and these networks and printers and all these cool things. They didn't know how to make them run. And so if you wanted help, assistance, you're in the business, you're in finance, you're a CFO, and you need to do your reports, and your PC gives you the blue screen of death. You call up Tim. Tim comes over to your office. He looks at you with disdain. We make some kind of off-the-cuff comment how it's user-oriented issues, right? Because it's absolutely not the technology's fault. It's the dumbass user, as I used to refer to him as. Then there on the spot, what do? Is I make them sacrifice their firstborn child so I can fix their machine for them. Those were the days. And we laugh, but we all loved those days, didn't we? Now things have changed. We have to go begging on our hands and knees to those people to give us some money so we can invest in technology, right? So the world has absolutely changed. But at that point in time, Charlie and I had worked for a number of companies in the IT industry. We did not like the way people supported and engaged with technology. So when we first thought about it, and we thought about our company, we wanted to focus on having a positive impact. And we believed to do that, we had to focus on bringing the best employees into our organization. So we had to have a positive impact on the lives of our employees. The second point that we had to do is we had to have a positive impact on our clients. We had to change the experience. So we became very focused on how do you deliver a better customer experience at that level. Then the third, our community. When we talk about community, it's a big term. It means not only the local community, the city of Providence, the state of Rhode Island, the New England region, and the entities that are in there, but it also means things like our partners, Cisco, Microsoft, back then, a whole different slew of partners that we dealt with. But that's our community. So we wanted to have a positive impact. Our entire business was designed around that. Then to achieve that model, we had to think about, to achieve the impact, we had to think about our business in a different way. Because most of the things they teach you in business school is how to make money, right? And how to run your business to get the results of making money. And so we thought about it. We said we have to do things different. And we came up with what we call the Atreon Impact Model. And this is what we've been following formally and informally for the last 27 years. So when we think about this, it starts with 5 basic elements. As a business owner, as a leader, I had to shape the experiences our employees and our customers went through to create the beliefs that we wanted. So we had to set the kind of right experiences. So we have been, for the last 4 years, recognized as one of the best places to work in the state of Rhode Island. That's not by accident. We consciously try to shape experiences that people want to legitimate work at Atreon. So we focused on creating experiences. Those experiences, if we do them right, shape the beliefs that we can be a different type of company. In our case, back in the early days, it was all about customer service. Instead of making people sacrifice young children to get service, we wanted to make it easy, and we wanted to make it fun and friendly and all those kind of things. So we had to shape the belief that service was more important than being right about the technology and showing that the user was dumb and didn't know the technology. So that we had to change the fundamental belief. And this was important because if Charlie and I were around, everything worked perfectly. But the moment we weren't involved, it didn't work. And you guys have some of those same issues in your organizations. You try to get your teams to be more customer service friendly. When you're around, they perform and behave correctly. As soon as you're not watching every move, things fall apart. Next, it leads to behaviors. We have to define the behaviors that are going to create the success for us. Then, when we look at this, if we do the right behaviors, we do the right things, we get unbelievable results. We get the results that we want. We get the outcomes. And they become better and more clear. Then last but not least, if I do enough of these results across many areas, I have impact. And that impact for Atreon is having that positive impact. For other people, it could mean something completely different. But for us, it's about having that positive impact. I'm going to show you visually how I imagine this model to look. If I could create something, it would look like a huge funnel. And you guys know what a funnel is like. I can put stuff in the top of the funnel, and what happens? It flows through, right? So if I put good things at the top, what happens? Good things should flow out. What happens if I put bad stuff? Bad stuff is going to flow through. And if I put a combination of good things and bad things at the top of the funnel, what happens? I get mixed results, right? This is the challenge that most corporate America is facing today. We're not focusing the right part of this model. We really need to start, what goes into this funnel is the experiences that we create. This is where leadership comes in. As leaders, we are responsible for creating those positive experiences that feed into the top of the tunnel. And this is not accidental. It needs to be intentional. Next, it feeds into our beliefs. Our beliefs then drive the behaviors that we want. And at the bottom of this, if we do the right things all the way through, we get unbelievable results at the end of the day. And it feeds into having a positive impact. I want to use this to kind of expand upon Chris's story. Remember Chris? When he started, he said that he loved to eat. And he didn't think about it. When you're young and you love to eat, it's usually not that big of a problem because you're burning it off and you kind of eat a lot, but you don't necessarily gain weight. But as we age, we put that weight on, especially for us men. We can put it right around our belly here. So Chris, one day, woke up and got ready for a business meeting, went to his closet, pulled out his suit, and went to put his pants on, and they didn't quite fit anymore. And so he cursed, and he grabbed another pair, grabbed the iron, ironed them, and made them all work. Next thing you know, his wife is kicking him out of bed, making him sleep on the couch because he's snoring. Chris is experiencing things that are starting to change his beliefs about what is important in his life. Before, when he was 5 pounds overweight, it wasn't a big deal. And if it was 10 pounds, it wasn't that big of a deal. But it got to a point where the experiences said 30 pounds is too much. So Chris starts to create a belief, I need to do something. But he also has conflicting beliefs. I've tried a lot of things and it's not working. Have you guys ever done that? I'll tell you, public speaking for me is one of those things. And for many of you in this room, public speaking is like worse than dying. I'm sitting over there waiting for my name to be called, and I'm saying, oh, I can do this, I'm going to nail it. It's like, oh, you're going to screw it up. They're all going to laugh at you, right? Those are the voices in our head that talk to us and tell us all the lies that we want to hear. So Chris is going with conflicting beliefs. He sees something, an experience. He sees an application. He looks at this application and it gives him hope. He eliminates one of the beliefs, the one that's the negative belief, the self-limiting belief. He then uses the tool, puts his profile in, starts following and executing the right behaviors. He's dieting, he's eating the right amount of food, and is tracking it. He starts exercising, he's burning calories. And he's doing these two things, and as this tool is keeping track of it, measuring what we call leading indicators, leading KPIs, are the measurements of the behaviors. He's starting to see progress. As he's seeing progress, he starts to lose weight. In over 90 days, he loses his 30 pounds. He gets the results that he wants. What we do, I believe that's absolutely wrong, is we focus on the results. Every morning we get up on the scale and we look at it. I've lost no weight. But I didn't take into consideration that yesterday I had the carrot cake after I had dinner, which is a true story. I'm a little sluggish on the stage today because of that carrot cake. But we don't take that in consideration. What happens, we start building beliefs that says, I can't do this, it's not working. And eventually we give up. We have to focus on the leading indicators, measuring the behaviors that are important to us to get the true outcomes. Measuring the lag measures or the trailing indicators doesn't matter because we lose a month, we lose 90 days and realize we haven't achieved what we want. So we have to shift what we measure. Now, Chris not only lost his weight, he's no longer sleeping on the couch. That's a big impact for him, I hope. Right? His clothes that once didn't fit now fit. He doesn't have to replace his wardrobe. He feels better about himself. He's more confident to come on the stage and be an MC of this event. And he has a healthier life. That's the impact that we want to go after. So I want to share the top of this pyramid, and I want to kind of talk real quickly about what Atreon has done in this area as an organization over the years to make this work for us. We believed that we had to create the right experiences, and we had to have the right belief system in. From the early days of Atreon, we decided there were three things that made up, that we had to do at the top of this pyramid to build the right belief systems. We refer to this as ideology, and it has three components. The first component is, what is our vision as an organization? Our second that we looked at is, why do we do what we do? What's our purpose? And if you guys remember Always On 2, Simon Sinek talked about starting with why. And then the third thing that we looked at is values. We had to be a values-driven corporation. So when we talk about, about vision, we looked at creating a unique kind of company. Most companies have vision statements. I bet you most of the organizations here have vision statements. Can I see a show of hands if your organization has a vision statement? How many people could recite it right now, your vision statement? Someone? Okay, there's someone over here that can do that. So out of about 600 people, one can recite their vision statement. And I would be willing to bet if I kind of guessed your vision statement, it would say something like this. We want to be the #1 in our industry. We want to have the best products, the best service, and the best people. That's usually the vision statement that you see because we all go to the same school to create the vision. Charlie and I, when we sat down, it was very simple. We didn't put a lot of time crafting and wordsmithing a vision statement. It basically came down to two things: top 1%. In our industry, we want to be the top 1%. We've used colorful metaphors to describe that. We would say that, we'd use analogies of climbing a mountain and being at the peak of the mountain. We've talked about being the Harvard Business School of our industry. But the bottom line is it comes down to one simple fact. We have to be or want to be the top 1%. Do you think that shapes the way I hire people? Can I just hire anyone off the street? My behaviors have to be different if I want to be a top 1% company. Do you think I want to use standard interviewing practices when I'm hiring people? Probably not. So it changed the behaviors that we had to create by having this vision in place. The second thing that we wanted to create as we did was what we call core purpose. Core purpose is kind of interesting, is why do we want to have a business? What are we trying to do? In Atreon, we can get confused and talk about the what. We could talk about being an IT company. We could talk about, being good at project management or managed services. We could talk about a lot of different things. But our core purpose comes down to one thing, is having that positive impact. Everything we try to do is about having that positive impact. We fundamentally believe that when we work with our clients and we work within the community, we're given a precious gift from our clients and the people in the community. They come over and say, here, we're giving you our trust. Now, as a person that's been given that trust, I have 2 or 3 responsibilities. One is I could drop it. Right? What happens if you drop that trust? Are you creating a positive experience? No. I could just take it and just hang on to it and do nothing special with it, right? Does that really have a positive experience? I may not lose trust, but it's not creating a positive impact that we're out there. So I got to take that trust that's been given to me, and I have to own it. And I have to endear it into our organization, and we have to grow it so we can create that positive impact. So positive impact is the second level. The third thing that we talk about is values. I do a lot of leadership training. I spend a lot of time with people that are learning to become better leaders. And I always ask the question, how many people understand your core values? How many people, percentage of people that come through these programs would know their core values pretty clearly, do you think? What do you think? You right there with the sweater and glasses. Yeah, do you think it's a 10%, 20%, 100%? 70%. So here's what's interesting, is about 80% of the people say they know their core values. We talk about core values for about an hour. We teach them how to actually develop your core values. I then give them an exercise to take home to really develop their core values. 90% of those people that said they know their core values when they first were asked come back with a completely different set of values after really reflecting on them. So core values help us make our decisions. If I don't understand my core values, my decision-making process becomes inconsistent. When it's one individual, it's easy, but how do you do it when it's an entire organization? Core values should be something that's not put on a plaque on your wall, shouldn't be printed on the back of your business card. Some people will come in, and I'll say, what are your company's core values? And what they have to do is pull their strip off so they can see their badge, and it's maybe written on the back of their badge. Or go to their website and look it up to find out what their core values are. Those aren't really core values if that's what's happening. We need every person in our company to make the same type of decisions around the same values. So we put a lot of emphasis in building this. It's all focusing at the top of the pyramid. If we believe we teach people about core values in our company, we teach them about being leaders, we teach them about kind of customer service, their beliefs that these things are becoming important. We make better decisions. It means we actually execute better against our behaviors. And eventually we get better results. So, as leaders, we're faced many times with making multiple choices. You guys agree with that? Sometimes our choices are good, and we move in a path that gives us the best results we could possibly get. Sometimes we make the wrong choice, and it moves us backwards. So when I look at this and I think about how does this belief model work, what are some of the challenges? What are the things that happen that are wrong that make this not work? I believe there's 5 what I call pitfalls in trying to make this model work in your organization. And you're going to hear some of these, when you hear these are going to make common sense because everyone has these problems. The first challenge I look at is what I call perspective. My organization has 250 people across multiple departments, multiple companies. Do you think that 250 people share the exact same perspective? Absolutely not. Do you think 2 people sitting side by side doing the exact same job have the same perspective? One problem that we have, if we want better outcomes, we have to close that gap. The gap between what people perceive has to change. I use this visual here to kind of show the point. If you think of an organization, there's people from entry level, which would be base camp, all the way up to the executive and board of that organization. Out of this map, who has the highest level view? It'd be the people at the top, the CEO, the board of directors. They would have the highest vision and understanding what the organization is going. Do you think it would be easy for them to articulate that to everyone so everyone can understand? Until you take the base camp and the people that are there and move them so they stand on the top, they're not going to understand it. So our jobs as IT professionals, we know technology extremely well. We know how to solve business problems with technology. Do you think a CFO, a chief marketing officer, a VP of operations understands how to use technology the same way we do? Isn't that a perception gap at that point in time? And I'd be willing to bet those same individuals know how to run the business better than you know how to run the business. So what we have to do is find ways to bridge that, which brings us to our second challenge, pitfall. We have weak communications. I remember a day in business when I wanted to talk to someone. I got up from my desk. I wasn't sedentary. I walked across the floor, across the room, across the building, and I said, Dave, we need to talk. And we'd have a conversation. And at some point in time, that got replaced. It got replaced with a telephone. I used to pick up line 1, call Dave's extension, and I would talk to Dave. And Dave actually answered his phone. There was no voicemail in those days, so I just couldn't let it go to voicemail. And if it rang and no one answered, it would eventually go to someone that would write on a pink slip. Tim called Dave. Dave called Tim back, urgent. Then that got replaced with what? Email, right? So 2 o'clock in the morning, oh, I got to talk to Chris. And I send him off an email. Chris gets up in the morning. First thing he looks at is his email. He sees an email from Tim. Because email is such a flat way to communicate, Chris gets pissed off. What the hell is Tim trying to do? Doesn't he see what I do? Doesn't he appreciate me? And now that's getting replaced with things like Facebook, with IM, with Link, all those kind of tools out there. We do a lot of communications, but it's weak and ineffective. So if we want to solve this, we've got to learn how to become better communicators. And part of it is we have to learn how to translate between multiple languages. And if you're in IT in this room, that is your job. You have to become that person. You're the only one who understands the technology and the impact it has. We have to translate to the rest of the business, or we're not going to be effective. The next area talks about self-limiting beliefs. So I'm going to share a real quick story with you. How many of you have ever heard this quote? It goes something like this. If you think you can, or you think you can't, you're, okay? So if you think you can, or you think you can't, you're right. Many of us have heard this before, and we all know it's true. Is that correct? You guys know that's true? So what I want to share with you is that if we think about the power of belief, and we understand the impact it has on creating results, I believe that that our beliefs have the power to make us extremely successful. They'll open the doors or the gates to our success. You guys agree with that? I also believe that our beliefs have the ability to be debilitating and paralyzing and stop us even from attempting the ordinary things in life. So beliefs are powerful. They can enable us or they can debilitate us. So the story I want to share with you is about a gentleman by the name of Roger Bannister, and it's about chasing the 4-minute mile. So in the mid-1900s, 4-minute mile was the common belief was the fastest a human could run. Many tried and many failed to break that barrier. Olympic athletes trained and tried and trained and tried, and over they failed to break the 4-minute mile. Soon, scientists and doctors started postulating about the 4-minute mile. They said if a man ran fast, it was impossible for a man to run faster than 4-minute mile. They went as far as to suggest that if a person actually ran faster than the 4-minute mile, their heart might literally explode in their chest. Can you imagine that? Thinking that a heart would just explode in their chest and we would die. But on May 6, 1954, on a dreary day in Oxford, England, Roger Bannister, a medical student and amateur athlete, went out and broke the 4-minute mile by 0.6 of a second. Now, this feat was remarkable in the fact that he actually broke the 4-minute mile. But what is incredible is what happened after that. Within 6 weeks after breaking the 4-minute mile, John Landry broke Roger Bannister's record by 0.2 of a second. Within that next year, 37 runners broke the 4-minute mile. And a year after that, 300 runners broke the 4-minute mile. What was once impossible has become ordinary. Isn't that true? You know what's funny about this? Not a single one of those runners had their heart explode in their chest. Today, top high school athletes routinely break the 4-minute mile. So what I want to leave you with on this thought is that many times the things that we consider to be impossible, we can make ordinary. So let me repeat this again. The things that we consider to be impossible can become ordinary. So we have to identify those self-limiting beliefs. And we all hear them in our organization. How many of you guys heard, we've always done that before? That's the way we've always done it. We don't have enough money to do X, Y, Z. We don't have enough time. You can go on and on. Those are the self-limiting beliefs that stop us from achieving better results. So the fourth problem that we have is that we have bad behaviors. I won't spend a lot of time on this. You see bad behaviors in your organizations every day. Sometimes it's intentional. You may have the wrong people on your team, and it's just they're not doing the right things to make us successful. But sometimes people are really working hard. They're just doing the wrong things. So I want to see a show of hands real quick. How many of you guys, on a regular basis, say on a weekly basis, receive a newsletter from someone that wants to sell you something? Let's see a show of hands. At least one in a week. Okay, now I want to see the same people that just raised your hand. How many of you actually read those emails? I see a couple people doing this, but I see no hands. So someplace, there's a marketing person writing a newsletter. They spend a lot of time doing this, a lot of activity. And if I went up and asked them to do something else, what are they going to say? I'm too busy. How is that helping me achieve a result of growing my business? If I'm doing things and no one's reading it. So we got to find the right behaviors that we need to be executing to get better outcomes. Last but not least, many times we don't know what we're really chasing after. We don't know the outcomes that we want. We don't know the impact that we want to create. And this is a high-level problem within organizations. We either know and we're not clear on it, or we don't have a clue where we really want to accomplish at the end of the day. Then how's the rest of the organization going to connect that to those things? So I'm going to share with you, my number one focus in life is creating an organization that has a positive impact. That's my number one focus. Everything I do, every single day, this event is an example of trying to have a positive impact. It's about having a positive impact. I have strategic goals that I want, outcomes that I want to create to help me achieve this goal. My outcomes are simple. They haven't changed much. There's 4 things that I want to accomplish. And I expect my team, my company, to help me accomplish them. So in my case, it's relatively simple. I want to grow. I'm in an industry that has to grow. My industry is not one that can have 3% growth year over year forever. It just doesn't work that way. You have to have decent double-digit growth just to survive in our industry. So growth is important. Growth is also the field that allows us to take best people in our company and have them move up in our organizations because people want to have advancement. The second is I have to be profitable. I got to be able to reinvest money into programs like our apprenticeship program. I got to be able to invest money into events like this that can help us move forward. Only way to do that is to be profitable. The third, think about our industry. It's about innovation. It's about that evolution and how we stay on top of that. We have to constantly be innovating. So innovation is a huge part of what we're doing. Then last but not least, and to me the most important, is about culture. So when people talk to me, how many times do you think I have people come up to me and say, Tim, I want to talk to you about how I'm going to improve the culture in our company. I want to employ this product, this technology, and it's going to do this, and it's going to help make our culture better. How many conversations do you think I have a day that are like that? Probably 0. Usually what happens is someone starts with a PowerPoint that has like 900 slides in it, and they say, this software product does all these awesome things. And they talk about number of users, number of bytes, bits. Do I really care? At the end of the day, what's happened is people are asking me to take this technology, this presentation I just heard, and make a decision to say, yes, this is going to help me change my culture. We need to change the language so that when you come into it and say, Tim, we know how we can change the culture of Atreon and make it better. And this is how we're going to do it. So we have 5 pitfalls that we just have to learn how to avoid. So in closing, we are poised to be able to achieve amazing outcomes. I think we're sitting in an unbelievable place right now that we can have a huge impact on our departments, our teams, and our organizations to help us become more successful. When I think about this, we are facing a tidal wave of change that's coming forward. This is the time for us, the time is now, for us to become amazing leaders in our organizations. We need to be able to take our teams and our organizations, and we need to be able to help them ride that wave of change. when we think about where we are today in organizations, we talked about the impact model. I think the impact model allows us to create new experiences, to shape the beliefs that our organizations and team have. It allows us to create new behaviors and drive new behaviors that allows us to get better outcomes at the end of the day. And if we do all that correctly, we're able to have a bigger impact in what we're doing. So we understand that, and we understand if we apply these rules, we can get the best outcomes possible. In addition to this, we understand that it's not going to be easy. Life is never that easy. There's always curves that are being thrown at you. And I believe that there's 5 things that we need to avoid, 5 pitfalls. If we can avoid them, helps us become better. First and foremost, we have to be able to change perspective. We have to look at the problem from multiple angles. Number 2 is we got to become better at communication. We got to avoid weak communications in the organization. Number 3, we have to eliminate self-belief. Number 4, we have to make sure whatever we're doing, the behaviors that we're driving, they're the right behaviors. And last but not least, we need to make sure that we're selecting the right outcomes that we're chasing. We used to have an expression when we were a kid that we talked about our dog used to chase cars. We used to laugh at the dog and say, what happens if you ever caught the car? Right? Sometimes when we achieve the results and the outcomes that we set out to do, we're not happy with where we're at. So we need to be better at this. So today, you've heard the Atreon story. You've heard us talk about Roger Bannister and his story. When I look around this room, there are 500 stories to be written. It's time is now for you to write your story. It's time is now for you to achieve unbelievable outcomes. And it's time for you to have an unbelievable impact on those around you. So, today, in my mind, is unbelievably, amazingly freaking awesome. You guys agree with that? Okay, that was good. So Chris said in my introduction, he says, he's always awesome. So right now, on this stage in front of you guys, I feel awesome. You allow me to share some of my insights with you. Hopefully you will find that these insights will help you become a better leader in your organization and help you achieve better outcomes. It's helped me fulfill my purpose in life, which is having that positive impact. So, I'm feeling awesome. How are you feeling? Have you guys gotten the script yet? Because I'm sure other people are going to ask you how you're feeling and how you're doing. So let's try this one more time. How are you feeling? Awesome. Okay, better. So I want to just take a second here. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here and sharing this moment and this day with us. I know this is a big chunk of time to take out of your schedule to sit here and listen to a bunch of people in suits talk to you. But hopefully, you can take one item away that will help your organizations become better and help you to become better. So thank you very much.